Hey guys, it's Liv here from Live Loud, and I'm here today with another true crime case. I don't really have much for the intro. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see more makeup content and be notified for when I post. If you would like to be notified for when I post on YouTube, go ahead and click the subscribe button down there. During the case, I just kind of put makeup on. So if there's anything that you're curious about what I'm putting on, it'll be in the description box below. And with that, let's get right into the case of Kyron Horman. So on June 4th, 2010, Kyron Horman had school, and it was the day of the science fair. He had done a project on green tree frogs that he was super excited about. Because it was a science fair, it was kind of a weird schedule for school. So most of the kids are 8-ish when they usually do, but parents were invited that morning to kind of see science fair stuff, and then class started at like 10. And so this morning, Kyron got dropped off at the school science fair. His stepmom, Terry, took this picture of Kyron with his green tree frog project. She then watched him walk into his classroom at 8:45 and then left. Classes started at 10. Kyron was actually marked absent from his classes. So usually when a kid is marked absent from their classes, they call the parents to be like, hey, your kid didn't show up. But they did not contact his stepmom, Terry, or his dad, Kane. And this is because Terry had actually told the school earlier that he had a doctor's appointment that week and that he would not be coming into school. The thing is, that appointment was actually for the 10th. So how things got lost in translation, if Terry said something, if the school understood something different, who knows? They didn't let them know he was marked absent. So when Kane and Terry went to pick Kyron up from the bus stop, he never got off the bus. And this was really concerning. So they talked to the bus driver and they were like, hey, where's our kid? You know, we're here to pick him up. He's not on the bus. The bus driver was like, oh, I didn't even see him get on the bus. Let's call the school. They called the school and that's when they found out Kyron had been marked absent from class. So it has now been about 7 hours since Kyron has last been seen. And if you know anything about missing persons cases, especially missing children's cases, you know that those first few hours are super crucial to the investigation. And the closer a child is reported missing to the time that they go missing, the more likely they are to actually be found. So it had been about 7 hours at this point, and a search was immediately started. There was no holding back in the efforts to look for Kyron. His case actually became the biggest case in Oregon state history. This happened in Portland, Oregon. I don't know if I said that. Portland, Oregon. This became the biggest case in Oregon history, and in the last 10 years since Kyron went missing, it has remained the largest case in Oregon state history. So I said Kyron was living with his dad and his stepmom, which kind of makes you wonder, where's his biological mom? What's the situation there? So Kyron was living full-time with Kane and Terry, his father and stepmom. And this was because his two parents were kind of getting ready to break up when they found out they were pregnant, and it just didn't work out. Both of his parents had remarried, and his mother had some reoccurring health issues with her kidneys, and it wasn't really the most stable environment for Kyron to be in. So they mutually decided that the best choice for their son would be to just live full-time with Kane and Terry. He maintained an incredibly close relationship with his mother and his stepdad. So Kyron's mom and his stepdad, as soon as they heard that Kyron was missing, they immediately did I think it was a 4-hour drive from where they were living south of Portland straight up to Portland as soon as they found out. And his mom, Desiree, was kind of confused with Terry's response. When she said she was coming up to help look for Kyron, Terry responded on the phone, "Oh, you are?" And this is actually a really weird interview when Desiree is kind of explaining this, and she seemed like it was like a really uncomfortable thing. Why would this kid's stepmom be questioning if his mom is actually coming up for the investigation? They had a good relationship. Like, Kyron's 4 parental figures, both his biological parents and both step parents, were critical in the beginning of this investigation, and they were super united. They appeared on many media outlets, all 4 of them together, pleading for Kyron's safe return. They were all united in the beginning, anyway. The night Kyron went missing, his stepdad was kind of explaining to the rest of Kyron's parental figures what would be happening next, kind of explaining that they had no privacy, that if they wanted to find Kyron, every aspect of their lives was going to be dug into and looked at. And he was able to say this because he himself was a detective. Tony describes Terry's reaction. So Tony's the stepdad, Terry's the stepmom. So Tony describes Terry's reaction as incredibly strange. She was not happy that she would not have very much privacy. She was really concerned about the fact that why would they even want to question her? You know, like, she's a stepmom. What reason would she have to do anything? It's like, well, lady, you were the last one to see him. Of course you're going to be questioned. Ridiculous. Terry was also super anxious and reluctant to even talk about taking polygraphs or having to deal with that. 3 weeks after Kyron's disappearance, his father, Kane, filed for divorce and a restraining order against his stepmom, Terry. During the investigation into their lives, a landscaper that had worked on their home came forward and said that Terry had solicited him to be a part of a murder for hire hitman situation to kill her husband, Kane, Kyron's father. Additionally, only 3 days after Kyron goes missing, so he goes missing on the 4th, Terry's the last one to see him, and then 3 days later, on the 7th, she's sexting one of Kane's really close friends. And this is not like, "Oh, I wish you were here, we should send pics." This was like, it was graphic. I did watch a Dr. Phil interview where he read some of the less graphic texts, and they were not PG. So on this same Dr. Phil interview, where Dr. Phil goes over the texts with Terry, she claims that this was all just a setup. That she had found out that Kane was actually cheating on her. In this big plot to get back at him, her and Kane's best friend decided they would send these explicit messages and, you know, emotionally get back at this guy. Why she picked 3 days after his son goes missing, because that's not emotional trauma enough. I also couldn't find any reports of Kane cheating. They may be out there. I'm not going to discount that. Whether they are or not, this is not an appropriate way to be responding to the disappearance of your stepson, and it is far from an appropriate way to deal with marital issues. So during the investigation, they also found that Terry had been using disposable phones to talk to 2 of her friends who also had disposable phones. And this was because they thought either one or all of them or one of them or any combination of them were being wiretapped. So one of these friends that she was using a disposable phone with I believe was likely just like a good friend that was not involved, just kind of dealing with a very paranoid friend who just lost her stepson. The other friend, though, when they checked her alibi, because, you know, of course they're gonna question her, what are you using disposable phones for? When they checked her alibi out, they found out that there was about 90 minutes that she had just left work that morning, and she could not account for these 90 minutes, which is very interesting. This is interesting because when we look at Terry's alibi, she claimed that after 8:45, after dropping Kyron off at school, she watched him walk into his classroom, and then she left the school. And when she left, she went and she ran some errands, and her daughter had a really bad earache, and so she just kind of drove around aimlessly. But this is about 3 hours where she is not caught on one security camera. She never really said where she was going shopping, just kind of mostly driving around aimlessly to soothe an earache, which I get, but you'd think the car would be caught on like a traffic camera or something. Nothing. It also was 2006, so we cannot discount that. I still think it's shady. So after this 3 or so hour time gap, Terry was seen at the gym by an acquaintance. Not quite a friend, but you know. And she said in an interview that they were just kind of like passing each other, but that Terry like flagged her down and was like, look, you know, I gotta talk to you. And they didn't really talk about anything. And her daughter, who was a baby at the time, was sick, the whole earache thing. And Terry was very insistent that this acquaintance see the picture that she had taken of Kyron at the science fair that morning. Her friend says she seemed super proud of it. She seemed super proud of Kyron, but that it was weird how insistent she was. So they checked out Terry's cell phone records, and none of them matched up with where she said she was at what time. But again, it was 2006, so they weren't able to use it to be like, oh, actually you were here. They could just kind of look and be like, well, you weren't here. So I was like 8 in 2006, so what do I know? So back to that morning with the science fair project, they were questioning school administrators and a few of Kyron's friends, because Terry had said she dropped him off at school and watched him walk into the classroom. A kid just doesn't vanish from school without somebody taking them somewhere usually. Kyron's parents said that he was a shy kid. He couldn't see without his glasses. He was super timid. He was not the kid that was gonna go wandering off or disappear kind of thing. He wasn't the 8-year-old that was gonna run away. So the administrators and some of Kyron's friends let investigators know that they had actually seen Kyron leave with Terry. There are also reports of people seeing Terry's car as she was leaving the school that morning, and there was more than one figure in her truck. And this is suspected to be her friend, Dee Dee, who had the time unaccounted for at work, who was also using the disposable phones with her. She also let slip during the interview with Dr. Phil that Kyron was in the car with her when she drove to school, but she let slip and she says he was not in the truck when we were leaving. So who was the we? Because the baby wasn't included in the we on the way to the school, and there are all these reports of a second figure being seen in the truck. Was there a we and she just let it slip? A little free and slip there on the Dr. Phil show wouldn't be the first time. So for a while, Terry also refused to take a polygraph test, and when she finally agreed to take these tests, she took 3 of them. The first one, she failed. The second one, she failed. And the third one, she left in the middle of the test. Just got up and walked out. She does give reasoning for these things though. So as far as the first test, she says that she is hard of hearing in her left ear, and so she could not hear what the interviewer was saying very well, and that she let him know this. But I looked into it, and Dr. Phil talked about it, that polygraph interviewers know that being hard of hearing can affect the results of the test. And so as part of the test, in the beginning, they make sure that you fully understand the questions, that you're comprehending everything. That's like a big part of it. So the fact that she said it was an issue when they would have asked her if it was an issue, and she says they asked her if it was an issue, and they didn't fix it, a little weird. The second one, she blames entirely on the interviewer because nothing is Terry's fault. So this second polygraph, she says the interviewer went into the interview with a bias, and because of this, the questions seemed to be tailored to finding her guilty. She came up with the example that one of the questions the interviewer asked was Kyron in the truck with you? The general assumption would be that means like when you were leaving the school, because we know he was with you on the way to the school. But she says this question was unfair because he was in the truck when she was on the way, but not when she was leaving. So was he in the truck? Yeah, he was, but not when they were asking in the time frame. And actually, if this kind of questioning did happen, I would question that second polygraph. I'll give her that one. If you can't tell where I kind of stand on this case, just after looking into it, and with the Letitia Stout case going on, definitely kind of in my brain, I'm not good at hiding where I stand on these things. My eyes are taking longer than the amount of information I have. So I went and finished everything but highlight and mascara. Something that really bothers me about the Dr. Phil interview, there's a lot that bothers me about that interview, is the way she refers to herself as feeling like she was Kyron's true mother. Maybe if his biological mom was not in his life at all, but they all had a very good relationship. The four of them were co-parenting pretty well, from what outsiders say, from what everybody but Terry says. And yet she refers to herself as Kyron's true mom because she took care of him most of the time. I can understand feeling like she has a deep connection with Kyron on that level, feeling like Kyron is a part of her family, which he should be, all kinds of things. But his true mom, really? That's what you're gonna go with? Concerning. So despite the true mother stuff and the being the last one to see Kyron and the 2 failed polygraphs, Terry still maintains her innocence. Unfortunately, we haven't found Kyron 10 years after his disappearance, and his parents are still searching and begging Terry to give any information she has. And she hasn't said a thing. And that's the case of Kyron Horman as it stands today. There is evidence that we do not know of. His mother has spoken of that. There are pieces of information that have not been released to the public that she alluded point to Terry. Could be me reading into it. And it just sucks. It just sucks, man. He would have been graduating this year. This kid should have lived to be a 2020 Corona graduate. And instead, he's gone. We don't know if he's passed away. We don't know what happened to Kyron on that day. And that's really unfortunate. If you know something or you see something, say something. And until then, keep hoping for justice for Kyron and his family. And that is it for today. Until the next one, don't forget to live safe, live happy, and live loud.